Instead of putting an end to Britain's complicated relationship with Europe, Brexit has ushered in a new phase. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson once dreamt of turning Britain into a more flexible global Britain. He wanted stronger connections with the United States and other democracies like Australia, India, and South Korea. But it seems like someone accidentally spilled a drink on the dance floor because there have been a few hiccups along the way. The consequences of the new arrangement have quickly become apparent, with empty store shelves and a shortage of truck drivers plaguing the country. Can Britain survive the effects of leaving the EU? Will they have to beg the Union to let them back in? Let's find out in this video. But before we get into it, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos in the future. So a while back, Britain waved goodbye to the European Union's rulebook, which to the rest of the world, and even the EU, was like breaking up with a spouse of almost 50 years. This move was seen as a significant and sudden shift in modern international trade. Brexit is still a puzzling and contentious topic. Even after several years of being in mainstream conversation, it's easy to forget how it all kicked off. But back in 2016, thanks to some strong right-wing pressure, they had that referendum asking folks in the UK whether they wanted to stay in the EU or call it quits. In the end, 52% said let's go, while 48% was set on staying put. An impressive 72% of the population showed up to cast their votes, one of the highest turnouts in UK history. On one side, you had people who liked the EU for its convenient trade, study, and teamwork perks. On the other hand, the people who wanted to leave also had valid reasons. Some thought EU immigration was too much, some felt the EU was pocketing too much money and power, and maybe it was a bit of a rebellious vote from the citizens, especially the working class, who felt like the higher-ups had forgotten them. All these factors help explain why there were heated debates all over the place, and not just in the British Parliament. Families and friends found themselves at odds, and discussing the topic became a minefield. In the end, the UK officially left the Union on January 31st, 2020. Since then, nothing has been the same. Whether you're a fan of it or not, it's been a solid 3 years since the UK bid adieu to the European Union. Since then, they have had their fair share of ups and downs, like a pandemic and now an energy crisis, making it pretty tricky to figure out the real impact of Brexit. The latest data seems to hint that Brexit did a number on the economy, but in some pretty unexpected ways. Back in 2021, when the UK waved goodbye to the single market and customs union, business trading with the EU suddenly found themselves dealing with a bunch of new rules, paperwork, and checks for certain goods. Naturally, this raised a bunch of concerns about the £550 billion worth of trade between the UK and their nearest trading partner, the EU. At first, we saw a dip in what the UK was sending over to the EU, but after they tackled those initial hiccups, trade volumes managed to bounce back to those pre-pandemic levels, according to the official figures at least. Still, you could argue that the surge in trade might have been more of a party if it weren't for Brexit. Just recently, the British Chambers of Commerce checked in with 500 companies, and more than half of them said they were still grappling with the new system. The new red tape involved with the system might have scared off some of their smaller exporters for good. And when we look at customs classifications, it's pretty clear that Britain is not exporting the same variety of goods as they used to. Imports have also made a comeback to those pre-pandemic levels, but those minds over at the London School of Economics have pointed out that the prices of goods UK imports from the EU, like your tomatoes and potatoes, went up maybe as much as 6% over 2020 and 2021, and that was before the recent inflation crisis. On the flip side, this has made it easier for local food producers to compete. Experts say they may have gotten a £5 billion boost. But what really catches your attention is the bigger picture. During the peak of the pandemic, international trade took a nosedive worldwide. Since then, other G7 countries have seen their trade rebound in comparison to their economies, which hasn't quite happened in the UK. The UK government keeps postponing health and safety checks on food imports from the European Union, and this is the 5th time they've done it in 3 years. They're worried these extra checks will drive up food prices and mess with crucial supplies. This recent dilly-dallying shows that Britain is still grappling with the tough consequences of leaving the European Union back in January 2020. It's been adding costs to UK businesses and putting a dampener on trade, investments, and, in the long run, economic growth. Brexit has also played a part in the UK's relatively high inflation rate by causing disruptions in its most important trading relationship and affecting the pound's value, making imports more expensive. According to a recent study from the London School of Economics, Brexit is responsible for roughly a third of the UK's food price inflation since 2019, tacking on nearly $8.8 billion to the grocery bill. Brexit's biggest drawback has been the hit to the UK's economic growth, mostly due to all the uncertainty it brought along. All the uncertainty around Brexit put a dampener on the UK's economic growth, dropping it from 2.4% in 2015 to 1.6% in 2019. The UK government even predicted Brexit could potentially shrink the country's growth by as much as 6.7% over 15 years, assuming we'd keep free trade but limit immigration. The British pound took a dive, going from $1.48 on the day of the referendum to $1.36 the next day. This was good for exports but not so great for important prices, and it hasn't even bounced back to its pre-Brexit levels. Leaving the EU has also had an impact on the UK's job market. It's been tough on younger workers in Britain. Germany, for example, is expected to have a shortage of 3 million skilled workers by 2030. And those opportunities might not be as open to UK workers post-Brexit. Employers have been struggling to find applicants, partly because EU-born workers left the UK, with their numbers dropping by a whopping 95% in 2017. This has hit the lower-skilled and medium-skilled job sectors the hardest. Trade hasn't exactly had a smooth ride since Brexit happened. Now the UK has to hustle and negotiate new trade deals with countries outside the EU. Even though they used to have a boatload of trade agreements through the EU with over 70 countries. Brexit put a dampener on London's financial scene. Growth was just 1.4% in 2018 and pretty much zilch in 2019. Business investments took a hit too, dropping by 11% between 2016 and 2019. Big international companies aren't as keen on using London as their go-to English-speaking entry into the EU economy anymore. Take Barclays, for example. They moved 5,000 clients over to their Irish branch. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley also shifted about 10% of their clients elsewhere. Even Bank of America got in on the action, moving 100 bankers to Dublin and 400 to a broker-dealer unit in Paris. Now, Northern Ireland is still hanging with the UK, while the Republic of Ireland, its neighbour, is doing its thing in the EU. Luckily, they managed to dodge the need for a customs border between them. Just so you know, if there was a customs border, it could have stirred up old troubles. The Troubles, a 30-year conflict between mostly Catholic Irish nationalists and pro-British Protestants in Northern Ireland, only ended in 1998 with a promise of no border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. Going back to a customs border would have meant about 9,300 commuters dealing with customs on their way to work and school. Not fun. The UK's economy is still in a bit of a tricky situation, thanks to the 1-2 punch of COVID-19 and the not-so-fun combo of high inflation and rising interest rates. In the G7 group of countries, the UK has the highest inflation rate, with prices for everyday things going up by 6.8% in July compared to 2020. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has responded to this by promising to cut that down to about 5% this year. Besides this inflation stuff, there's also the ongoing worry about the food supply in the UK. Turns out the country gets most of its food from outside, and earlier this year some of the big supermarkets even had to limit how much fruit and veggies people could buy because bad weather in the places they usually grow stuff caused a drop in imports. Brexit can be seen as a vote against globalization, which in turn has weakened the forces in the EU that support integration. Right-wing, anti-immigration parties in France and Germany in particular have anti-EU sentiments. If they gain enough support, they might push for an anti-EU vote. If either of these countries were to leave, the EU would lose its strongest economies, potentially leading to its dissolution. On the flip side, a majority of EU citizens still strongly back the Union. A Pew Research Centre survey across 10 European nations found that nearly 75% believe the EU promotes peace, and 55% think it supports prosperity. Furthermore, over a third see the UK's influence diminishing. When Brexit initially occurred, it was quite a shock. There were concerns about a domino effect and fears that it marked the beginning of the end of the EU. However, the EU has remained united and consistent in handling Brexit and is determined to move forward. From the EU's perspective, Brexit is undoubtedly a setback. Having the UK as a member state would have been preferable. Nonetheless, respecting the UK's decision to leave is essential. although it won't significantly affect the EU's long-term direction. Interestingly, Brexit has made it harder for the hardcore Eurosceptics across Europe. Even leaders like Marine Le Pen and Salvini are no longer advocating for the countries to exit the EU or the euro. So in the long term, while it's a geopolitical loss and means dealing with a challenging neighbour, it might not necessarily put the brakes on the European project or what the EU, with its 27 members or potentially more, decides to pursue. Brexit basically threw London's status as a global financial hotspot into a bit of a spin, but that means New York might just benefit from that. Surprisingly, Brexit might actually have a few upsides for the US. Right after the Brexit vote, the currency scene went nuts. The euro dropped 2% to $1.11 and the pound nosedived by a whopping 8% to $1.36, giving the dollar a boost. Now, a strong dollar isn't the best news for US stocks because it makes American shares a little bit more expensive for buyers from other shores. But either way, the weak pound hasn't really slowed down the US exports in the UK. In 2019, US exports to the UK hit $147.4 billion, up from $141 billion in 2018, making for a surplus of $21.8 billion. Meanwhile, US imports from the UK were at a modest $125.6 billion. Brexit put a bit of a dampener on business growth for the companies playing in Europe's sandbox. US companies went all in, throwing $851.4 billion into the UK in 2019. Most of that cash landed in finance, insurance, manufacturing, and those non-bank holding companies. On the flip side, UK businesses tossed a cool $505.1 billion into the US in 2019, with a lot of it going into manufacturing, wholesale trade, and finance. Now, back in early 2021, the UK and the US were chatting about a trade deal, but they hit a roadblock, mainly over farming issues. The UK has stricter rules against food safety and animal welfare compared to the US, and UK farmers were a bit worried that cheaper, lower quality agricultural products could flood the market and mess up their game. Either way, it's a messy situation all around. Whether the deal was worth it or not is up to the UK. Do you think Brexit was worth it? Let us know what you think about their choice in the comments. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you like, subscribe, or share your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.